it and it's recording, and we will let people, it looks like some people are joining right now, so we'll give it a few minutes.
All right, yeah, no worries.
Can you believe it's Thursday? I feel like all these days, I keep saying this over and over again. I feel like they all go together. Like I was just talking to a client this morning and I kept referring to last week, but I think it was honestly like 2 weeks ago when we.
Yep. This whole year's been kind of, yeah, it's been interesting.
Yes. It is, and it is crazy. And I was actually just talking to one of the founders of VisualFizz yesterday, and she was talking about how she saw the expiration date of 2021. She's like, what the, this expires in a year? It's just like in a couple of months.
Well, it's been kind of a blur this whole year.
Yes. So yeah, a couple of people are coming in, so let's just give it like one more minute.
So are we actually, can people hear our conversation right now? Are we live?
No. Yes, we are live right now. Yeah, because we were in like a practice session of Zoom earlier, but in order to allow people to come on,
you have to go live.
Yeah. But I'm really excited about this conversation. However, as much as I think like website development and mobile apps are extremely interesting, I'm not very technical, so we might have to do some hand holding here.
Yeah, that's fine. No worries.
Let's just give it till 12:05. Why not?
Yep, that's fine.
Make it a nice even 12:05.
We're on the countdown.
But thank you both so much for being able to join us at noon on a Thursday.
Yeah. No worries.
We had nowhere else to be. No, I'm joking.
Well, nowhere else to physically go.
Yeah.
You could actually be in a lot of places at the same time, all virtually.
This is true. This is true.
And we actually have been today. We had a lot of meetings. We had a meeting in Texas, a meeting in Oak Brook, out suburb of Chicago. We've been all over the world today.
Yeah, all very exciting. I actually used to live in Oak Brook for 3 years.
Oh wow, okay.
My significant other used to work at UBS in the tower, if you're familiar. I saw that your background was in finance, so probably know of them.
So what area of finance?
He was a financial planner, but now he works for Salesforce as a solutions engineer.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
A little bit of a pivot. Yeah.
Oh yeah, but he still works with financial clients and institutions. That's like a big part of the business over there. But anyways, we could get started. Let me start by introducing myself and what the growth series is to those who have not attended one of these before, and then we can jump into your background and introduction of yourself. So I'm Sydney Oberholzer. I'm the marketing manager at VisualFizz. If anyone on this call is not familiar with VisualFizz, we are a full service digital marketing agency that works with growth stage organizations, building their brand, and also brands looking to give their brand a little refresh. For anyone who hasn't attended a growth series event before, we talk through growth, both professionally and personally, entrepreneurship, business strategies, marketing strategies, along with our guests. Usually we have one, today we have two, so a nice bonus. They will share their experiences growing their brand, their company. We'll go through their personal growth and get a little peek into how they got to where they are at today. We have covered topics in luxury marketing, social media, content marketing, pivoting businesses during COVID in the past. But today we will cover how mobile apps can help boost businesses. Very exciting. I'm actually really interested in this since I don't always touch that part of the industry, but also it's very exciting because we're living in a digital world, and because of the situation we're in, I feel like this whole side of things is kind of moving a little faster, but I would love to hear your opinion, of course, as well. And today we are joined by Kevin Bulger and Sean Doyce, co-founders of Calibrate, a company that designs and builds websites and mobile apps. We'll cover their backgrounds for about 45 minutes, and then the last 15 is open for Q&A. So please, if you have any questions, submit them using the Q&A button on Zoom, and we will definitely get to them. So to kick it off after my long-winded introduction, welcome Kevin and Sean, and can you please introduce yourselves and give us a little background of how you met and Calibrate?
Well, how we met's kind of a long story, but I'm Kevin Bulger, CEO of Calibrate. Just, I guess, high level background. We're both Chicago guys, born and raised. Basically went to DePaul University. Both of us actually went to the same high school and college, even though we didn't know each other. After that, I actually traded at the Board of Trade for a bit, so a little bit of a finance background. After that, actually worked at Groupon. Was there for about 7 years. When I started there, I worked in the business, the goods business business unit. So within that vertical of the company, we worked to build out our supply chain, basically growing from a pretty young startup within a startup to a $1.5 billion business in a matter of, a year and a half to 2 years. So pretty significant growth. So had the luxury or opportunity to be part of a startup, but also yet we were still publicly traded. We were still a large company and still had tons of interaction with very large companies and large suppliers, which I later transitioned into doing all of our supplier engagements for logistics and then eventually professional services. So after that, Sean and I actually, that's kind of where we met. We founded our own company or startup called Tally. Premise was Uber for bars. You could literally go to a bar, open your tab from your phone. You could literally order with the bartender, interface with them as you ordinarily would. And then you could close your tab manually, or you could actually walk out of the bar and it would auto close, apply gratuity, and email your receipt to you. So we sold that a couple of years ago, and that's what kind of brings us to today, which is Calibrate. Calibrate's been around, I'd say 2.5 or 3 years. We service a multitude of different clients, including a lot of startups, but we also work with healthcare companies, cybersecurity companies, private equity, hospitality, so all sorts of different sectors of the market. And it's been, honestly, Sean and I have always been entrepreneurs and always had our own companies, but I think it's been very rewarding to leverage our experience for the last decade or more in doing that to help others accomplish their goals in a cost-effective and efficient manner. So Sean, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah. So yeah, my name's Sean. So Kevin pretty much nailed everything after we met. Prior to Kevin, I kind of took somewhat of a different path. So I tried to kind of steer clear of like corporate America. Right out of college, like Kevin mentioned, I graduated from DePaul University. Right out of college, I started my own startup with a buddy of mine called Tender. And this was right at the time, you guys are probably familiar with like the Square card readers. Those card readers that you insert in the iPhone. So right at that time, we were actually trying to compete with that company. I ended up doing that for about 3 or 4 years. Obviously, Square is now the #1 card reading company out there. So we didn't really capture that market like we had planned. But after Tender, that was actually a really great learning experience. I moved on to a fintech startup where I worked on creating the UI UX design for their loan application online. So if you think of something similar to like applying for a mortgage online, how you have to collect all different types of documents, that's kind of where I honed my design experience. If I didn't mention earlier, I graduated from DePaul with a degree in UI, so user interface and user experience design. So I used the fintech company that I work for to kind of hone those skills. And then after the fintech company, I had met Kevin, and in between meeting Kevin and transferring from fintech, I actually joined one last startup where we went through Y Combinator. So I actually moved out to California for 3 or 4 months. We lived in a house, 5 guys. It was literally nothing but coding, designing, 20 2 hours a day. It was kind of crazy. Like I can't even, the amount of sleep we got, it was non-existent. So that was that was honestly another good learning experience. After that is when we kind of, Kevin and I kind of really doubled down, started Calibrate. And that's what we're doing to this day. We used all of our experiences combined to create really high quality websites and mobile apps for users that need that services.
That's incredible. And I think there's kind of a connection between both of your like apps that you created before, because that kind of feeds into now developing those for others. So how do you two break out your roles at the company? Like who handles what?
I'd say that's very easy because Sean and I are polar opposite. So I think since having worked together before, and like Sean alluded to, Sean was he was the head of design at a lot of those other startups, or actually all of them. But the one in Y Combinator, for example, like him and I was a contractor for that company, so I only went out for 1 week. I got a little taste, but that was about it of the house in Mountain View. But fun experience. So we've worked together on a multitude of different projects. So we obviously have natural, chemistry, I would say, at this point in the game. I'm more the business guy, more, customer facing in terms of, managing things, getting things done, interfacing with our clients, setting expectations, scoping our different projects, building our technical requirements. And then I would say Sean is definitely, Sean's very technical. Actually, I think one thing that makes him unique is not all UI UX designers have that technical background or understanding, but Sean actually does, which is pretty cool. He actually can do a little bit of coding. So Sean kind of handles that end of it, but then really Sean's bread and butter is, UI UX design. I'll let you kind of elaborate, Sean.
Yeah. So I think you pretty much nailed it on the head. I have a deep passion for user experience and UI design. So I'm always trying to kind of focus my attention on that. And when it comes to the business side of things, that's not my specialty. I mean, I did do freelance design where I had to kind of manage the clients on my own for years before meeting Kevin, but that was always the part that I kind of always cringed at. So meeting Kevin was honestly like, when he told me he had a background in business and he was more than willing to handle the business side of things, I was like, this is going to be great.
Yeah. I mean, that is great. You guys are like yin and yang. Like, I think that's how it works with like one having a strength and then the other, balancing each other out. That's awesome. I can't picture any other way. Otherwise, I think that you'd be butting heads or something. But what drew you to the entrepreneurial path, and how does that affect the way you work with brands today?
Well, I would say on my side, I've had the benefit, I would say, of getting some corporate exposure. Most people wouldn't look at Groupon and say it's corporate, but don't forget in my later years there, I had a lot of exposure with external suppliers. So we're talking FedEx, UPS, the big four, like Deloitte, KPMG, EY. So seeing how they operate, seeing how they conduct themselves, in addition to internally watching our company mature and grow and basically go from a reactive company to a proactive company, and making that transition, that transformation, and seeing the different levels and stages of maturity. I think it was a valuable experience. But to Sean's point, corporate America was not something that I respected, and I would not trade that experience for the world. I think I'm a little bit better suited, to be, a little bit and have that more of that entrepreneurial mindset. I've always wanted to have my own business. I was reading the Wall Street Journal. I made my dad get me a subscription. I was like 7 years old. So I've always been all about business. So I think that having my own company, being self-motivated, I actually played hockey my entire life from 3 through college. And I think a lot of values and a lot of that, motivation and just being goal-oriented, kind of was conducive to having your own company, your own business, and just, kind of creating your own destiny. So that was something I would say that's kind of how the entrepreneurial, field was most appealing to me, or path was most appealing to me, just based on my personality, background, et cetera. I think I'm best suited towards it. But like I said, I think I can't place enough emphasis on, one reason I think I'm as effective on the business side in terms of deal structure, partnerships, managing clients, setting expectations. all of those values learned in that corporate setting were invaluable. So it's just one of those things, like I would have loved to have just, started Calibrate and just had our own business day one. But I feel those lessons learned, throughout the process and throughout my tenure there was, were invaluable, and I still use them today. So, Sean,
Yes.
sorry.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I never really thought about why I chose this path. It might not come as a surprise, but honestly, now that I'm thinking through it, both my parents kind of went through corporate America, and I just growing up, when we were eating dinner, my dad would be telling me horror stories from his boss, or my mom would be telling me terrible stories that happened at work, and I didn't want to take that path. I didn't want to have to be, I guess, chained to some type of chain of command, and it's just not in my nature, I guess. So having my own schedule and being able to be my own boss was kind of something that I have always been kind of striving for. So in college, that's why one of the reasons I took the UI UX design path was because not only did I have a passion for it, but I knew I could also kind of freelance that on my own and kind of grow. I mean, at that point, I was in control of how much growth I could kind of create. I wouldn't have to rely on anyone or anything of that nature. So yeah, I think it just was, it might just be an intrinsic quality that I kind of inherited growing up. But I overall, I'm very happy with it. I have no regrets, and I don't think I would do it any other way.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely sounds like you have a unique mindset. I feel like not a lot of people can say that coming out of college that they want to start their own thing. So like major kudos. And Kevin, to your point, I never realized the connection between athletes and entrepreneurship, but the more I meet athletes, the more I realize that they are running a business more than working for another company. There are so many essential traits that like trickle over and help you with your company. So yeah, now going into Calibrate and getting a little bit more into the nitty gritty of it. What is an example of something that you've created for a client?
I mean, we've had a lot of projects over the last few years. I guess you go first, Sean. I think.
Well, did you want to bring it? Which project were you thinking of?
You go.
So one of the interesting. Do you just want us to talk about the quick project that we were interested in?
I guess to be a little bit more specific, like at what type of businesses would require your services, and at what point in their like growth stage would they need like an enhanced website or a mobile app?
Yeah, sure. So when it comes to, I can speak a little bit about that. When it comes to mobile apps, we've found that most people come with just in the idea phase. So we don't get too many clients that already have a mobile app. There's a few. We do have a few clients that come to us already with a mobile app. But what we found is most people have this concept or this idea or this great thing that they want to create, and that's kind of where we take over. They just as you mentioned, not everyone is super technical, so they know what they want, but they don't really know how to explain it. They don't know where to start. So that's kind of where Calibrate shines. We come in, we'll draft up an entire business plan. If they haven't thought of any potential revenue streams, we'll walk them through how they can potentially make money off of the app versus just creating an app out of passion, because obviously every app is going to cost money. So you want to make a return on that. So we'll walk them through that part of the process, and then just the visual side of it. I think that's I'm a little bit biased, but I think that's a super important aspect of it. Mm-hmm. And the way we kind of handle that with mobile apps in particular is we'll create all the visuals, and we'll create what's called an interactive prototype. So the user will be able to kind of interact with their idea or their concept before we actually do any coding. So there's a service called Envision that we create these prototypes in, and it feels like you're using a real app. The only thing is there's no code behind it, and it's not going to be as fluid.
Yeah, all the data is static.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of the process we've taken with many mobile app clients. And Kevin, if you want to maybe talk about web or.
Yeah, I think, to your point, Sean, I think there's when you're looking at the type of customer, it is a little bit broader because we're not a commoditized service. You know, it's very bespoke to a specific use case, a specific client. Like Sean hit on mostly that Sean hit on early stage of pre-product, pre-revenue startup that's coming to us. To Sean's point, we also have clients that are already established. They already have an app or some type of obviously product like a website or app, and they come to us. They maybe want us to redesign it, or in other cases, they want us to just take over the maintenance and help them get from A to B until they start to iterate on the product again. But I think the other side that I'd like to hit on too is the SMB side, the small and medium-sized business side. So that's where it's not typically as creative as the startups, and usually you're dealing with an established company that already has processes, procedures, employees, all that. But what they're lacking in is usually some type of technology solution that would streamline a process or workflow in their organization. So in those particular instances, like one example is one of our healthcare clients. We have a bunch of healthcare clients, but one of them in particular, and they're one of our oldest clients, ironically. You know, they came to us, they wanted to build a mobile application. They're a home care company. They deal with acute care in the home. So patients with very serious ailments, you know, people who are on ventilators, et cetera. And they wanted us to basically start with the mobile app. Their nurses have to go through rigorous compliance and training pretty frequently and periodically throughout the year to be complicit with state regulations and government regulations in general. So we first started by building a mobile app with them years ago. We've iterated on that. We've also now built an internal web application to manage all of their existing processes from a clinical side or administrative side at the office. I would say with them, what's great about them is that's a lot more hands-on, that type of account. It's something where you're consistently working with them. We were at their office, especially before COVID, we were at their office on a regular basis. It was kind of a revolving door policy for us. So we were in and out all the time, working very closely with key stakeholders, whatever, like, for example, we just built out a module that's going to automate a ton of their processes from an HR perspective. And without going into too much detail, for that particular project, we worked very closely with their HR department and their HR team to understand, like, we would conduct what we call a gap analysis. So we understand their current state, like how does your process work today? Then we identify opportunities for improvement or a desired state based on some type of technology driven solution. So I think that's another great, case study, if you will, of a client. So we have the startup clients, which are tons of fun to work with. Sean and I are able to add a lot of value in terms of their overall strategy, getting to monetization, which sometimes happens sooner than others. And then obviously you have the small and medium-sized business side of things where we're taking more of a consultant-based approach with them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in all those instances, it really depends on the company and where they're at, because it kind of seems like they can benefit from one of your solutions in various departments, various stages. From everything that you've seen over the last 2.5 years, what are the common benefits of having an app other than streamlining processes?
Well, I think it depends what lens you're looking at it through. And I know Sean's going to definitely have some opinions here. I think that depending on the product, I mean, apps are more habitual. So when people are downloading them, I think they have more of a propensity to use the applications. And yeah, of course, there are plenty of people that have a sea of apps on their phone and things might get lost in it. Sean's one of those, his phone's maxed out with apps, but he still uses them. And I think that, especially if you're an e-commerce company or some type of social networking or social media type company, you're obviously going to want to have an application or a mobile presence. It also affords you the opportunity to tap into the operating system of the smartphones. So push notifications, which are the cheapest and I would say probably the highest open rate or conversion rate in terms of actually getting your user to act. All of those things are at your fingertips. In addition to geolocation and other features like that. So I think that having apps afford you additional functionality to engage your audience or create a better experience. But then also, I think they create more of a habit around your user base. I think, and at this point, of the game, I think that it's almost, you can't afford not to have one if you're a certain type of business. So Sean, I'll let you chime
Yeah,
in.
no, I totally agree with that. I mean, COVID has obviously put people back in front of desktop computers. But if you think about pre-COVID and potentially post-COVID, how most people are just out and about, and what mobile apps honestly solve is it puts the product in your pocket, right? So if rather than being at a computer, like before, if you think about even Zoom, if Zoom didn't have a mobile app, just think about how many Zoom meetings would not take place, because a lot of people are taking Zoom meetings while in the car at Starbucks, and they might not have their laptop with them. So it's just that type of technology enables, I mean, it's the pure ability to conduct business remotely, I think, that really is the driving force behind mobile apps. Websites, on the other hand, are kind of is in a similar vein. Websites nowadays, if you don't create a website that's responsive, you might as well not have a website at all, because websites are mostly viewable from mobile devices. I mean, if you look at the traffic that comes through a lot of websites, you'll notice that even like numbers like 70-80% of viewers are viewing the website on their phone. They're not actually sitting down in front of the computer. And I think that's really important to note, because a lot of clients come to us and they're like, we want this really cool website with all these animations and graphics, and then we always have to kind of tell them, hey, people are going to be viewing this from their phone, so you don't always want to focus your attention on the desktop. It's called mobile first design approach, and that's something that we employ here at Calibrate. We make sure that if we are designing a product, we look at all the different types of users that are going to be using it, and we make sure that we focus our attention on the right areas, the right devices. Some apps, I mean, are really tailored for tablets. Like I'm trying to think of, we did one app recently. It was like a journal entry app, and while creating journal entries on your phone is doable, it really was better on tablets. So we made sure the experience was kind of tailored more towards the tablet side of things.
Yes, and we're actually the same. We're on board with everything you just said. VisualFizz, that's something that we always recommend for our clients as well, to go mobile first, because that's just the reality. Like, first off, our phones get bigger every year, and so it's easier to do more things on it. So it's definitely something to take into account, especially from a user experience perspective. And also, to your point about tablets, that's really interesting, because I also have a tablet. So I have many screens in front of me at all times. And I get so frustrated when an app doesn't fit my tablet. And one of them in particular is Instagram. How out of a Facebook-owned company, like one of the biggest companies, how the heck does it not open up and expand full screen?
No,
so
you're
like,
right.
It's a very frustrating situation, and you wouldn't expect it.
I think honestly, I think it might be by design.
Have the reason, but
I think it might be by design. I'm sure if someone had Instagram, we could talk to them. They probably really want to force the user through using their phones. But yeah, it's for them not to have an iPad app is just kind of crazy.
It is, and I will say, yes, it's like a handful of times I'm more on my phone, but like when my phone's dead, then I like to go on my iPad. Like, it is what it is. But are there any trends that you're seeing around apps and mobile websites overall?
Well, I mean, I would say from my perspective, certainly this year, I would say is definitely put a large emphasis on having a digital strategy in general, not just from a mobile app perspective, but just e-commerce, having, obviously mobile payments, et cetera, has been critical. So I think that and then on the other side of the equation, you have the end user. You have, if you're looking at an adoption curve or product life cycle, you're going to have like your early adopters, your innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, and then kind of the last piece of the bell curve. I think it's forced a lot of the late majority and that final piece or final percentage of people to kind of jump on the bandwagon, to be honest. It's been very great for companies like Amazon and those and Zoom, but hopefully some small businesses will be able to benefit from that as well. Obviously, we care a lot about the small businesses. So as far as a trend this year, I think there's been a huge emphasis put on technology. I mean, my family alone, a lot of people in my family are not as tech savvy, and they're on Zoom, they're on Hangouts. It's become a normal thing for them, a normal habit. So I think it's definitely changed people's, habits. As far as taking a step back, not just from a COVID standpoint, I think when you're looking at more technical, you're seeing a lot of frameworks, a lot more updated or newer frameworks coming to market. Google has their version called Flutter, which is basically a framework for mobile app development. Facebook invented React Native a few years back. I think it really has started to pick up momentum. I didn't think it really started to pick up momentum until about 2016, 2017. But React Native is actually something we specialize in as far as a framework goes. There's a lot of advantages to that. Those are the kind of the trends I'm seeing from an industry standpoint and from a technical standpoint in terms of frameworks and whatnot. I think Sean probably is best suited to answer.
And I was just going to add to that really quick and say from like a solution standpoint, what I'm noticing is a lot of health and wellness related apps. So in terms of content, like what type of apps are we seeing? What type of websites are we developing? There's a lot of users, especially with COVID, are thinking about things like fitness and wellness and health. And you're seeing a lot of things sprout up in the app store. You might even have some of these apps on your phone. I don't know if you've ever heard of like Calm or Awake.
Oh yeah.
These are pretty common meditation apps. I'm seeing a lot of emphasis being put towards that type of concept. And it's just really interesting because every app kind of takes a little bit of a different approach. And that's honestly where I think, people like me being UI UX can actually gather a lot of insight and apply that towards future apps. So like by using, like Kevin mentioned earlier on the call, my phone is literally just filled to the brim with apps to the point where Apple actually couldn't handle how many apps are on my phone. They ran out of screens. Like they only let you have like 15 screens or something. So I actually wasn't able to access some apps.
They're all in folders too. So
yeah, I even like maxed out the folder.
I think Sean has every app that was ever created.
But yeah, it's necessary though, because one of the things that my job requires is that I look at how apps are kind of being designed and pieced together, and then like I said, apply that towards our clients' projects. So
yeah, and that's a good point that you just brought up. So still looking at the trends, are there any like specific trends for specific industries like healthcare? Like what are you seeing amongst the apps?
Oh, a lot of apps related to healthcare I feel like are doing some type of tracking. So it's like Apple came out it was a couple of years now. They came out with that ring concept that you might be familiar with if you have an Apple Watch, or if you have if you've ever used the health app. They what they do is they have this concept where they nest like actual rings. It almost looks like a pie chart. So you get 3 or 4 different rings, and then they encourage the user to what they call close the rings. So like if they recommend doing 2,000 steps in a day, that as you walk throughout the day, that ring will start filling up with a certain color, like green. And then they want you to get 8 hours of sleep. So if you sleep 8 hours, the ring that's dedicated to sleep will start filling up with purple. And then the whole goal is to kind of complete and close your rings. And I'm seeing that concept pretty heavily being brought into the app world. Right now, we're working on a specific app where you can track acts of kindness. So one of the metrics this client wants is to be able to track your acts of kindness. So if you do something like during the day, like help an elderly citizen cross the street, you can even record that in terms of this like ring concept that I just kind of mentioned. So we're seeing a lot of just like Kevin said, habitual kind of
and also gamifying things too.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say.
The gamification of whatever you're doing. People are competitive. They want closure. So if there's something left open, they want to close it. If there's a competition, there's somebody else doing something better, they want to keep up with them or do better. So.
Yes, that is the culture we're in. Like I think they recognize that like gamer life and that gamer trend, and like a big part of our population has an affinity towards gaming. So, and that is a habit building way, like you mentioned before. Like it gets people extra invested because they want to complete something, get to the next level, they want to win something, they want to be rewarded. But
there's a lot more psychology that goes into especially the UI UX design than most would probably think about when playing around with an app.
Yeah, I mean, UI UX is honest.
Definitely changes your perspective and how you look at apps, and
yeah,
it kind of changes your how you're looking at them and how they feel. So it's kind of cool. To have.
No, it's definitely very interesting. And I think you're doing your job right if the end user doesn't realize that.
Right.
And also it kind of is like making you more conscious on like what you're doing by plugging it into an app and tracking it. But other than that, do you have any advice for companies that are evaluating if they need a mobile app? What are some factors they should consider?
Yeah, for sure. I would say, I mean, if you're kind of evaluating if you need it, I mean, obviously, if you don't have any subject matter experts, obviously call us. But I think that talking to somebody who does understand apps and technology is important when weighing in that, and someone that's going to give you honest feedback too. There are a lot of people out there that will take advantage of the situation. There have been times where we told people we don't really think you need a mobile app here. Or we're not sure it's a good use of your capital given your budget. It's important to be transparent with your clients or potential clients, and I think people respect you for that. When we're doing an assessment, what we want to look at is what's the overall strategy for the company. If they have an existing company and they're looking to add a mobile app, I would say it's a different conversation than if you're just trying to start one. But we look at the overall business. Try and look at, I'm from a financial standpoint, I like to make sure that they're making a good financial decision because it is an investment. So it's important, and it's a time commitment. So I think it's important to make sure that, our goal is really to educate our clients or potential clients to understand the pros and cons of having a mobile application and kind of give them, the tools to make the decision and make an informed decision, having all the facts. Sean, I'm sure you have some stuff to add to that.
No, actually, I think you pretty much nailed it.
That's right. And I'm sure when at first, at least when you talk with any prospective brands or brands that are evaluating if they need it, I'm sure it is kind of a shock because I don't think a lot of people realize the process it takes and sometimes the cost, especially if you want an app or a website or a solution that is intuitive and works well. And one thing that I realized too, and correct me if I'm wrong, is like, you definitely want to get it right the first time because it's difficult to switch things up if it's not giving you everything you need to go back in and change the framework or what have you.
Yes and no, actually. So I'll take the other side of the argument is we always try to make sure that the scope's refined, especially if it's a new product. We usually try and if there's a limited budget, we try to sway our clients more towards an MVP, which is a minimal viable product. So what exact features do you need? What's your core competency? What features do you need to get to market to get feedback? Because the key is you actually want to get user feedback. If you look in, our head of marketing on our team, his name's Adam, like he always tells our clients, he's like, guys, take a look at the App Store, take a look at the updates. You'll see that they update it periodically. There's bugs happen, edge cases happen. And then of course, they're always iterating to make the product better. So when you have an app, like we tell our clients, it's good to be aligned on the scope and understand the feature set out of the gate and make sure everyone's on the same page. But as you roll out the app and as you grow your user base, you're going to have ideas yourself and you're going to get feedback from users. So when you're taking that feedback, you're obviously going to prioritize it on your product roadmap. And this is more of a DevOps thing. But once you prioritize it, you'll pull it into the sprint backlog and then basically start executing on it during your sprints. And then eventually roll it out to production where everyone's going to benefit from the feature that you added. So I think it's important to, like Sean always tells our clients, it's an evolution. So you're not going to just build it and be done with it. You're going to build it and then you're going to take that feedback to iterate it and make a better product.
Yeah, that's a common misconception. A lot of clients will think that you just make an app. Like you don't really just make an app. What you do is you create what Kevin said, like an MVP. You create the most basic form of the app with the most minimal features to launch. And then you take that user feedback and you evolve the app and iterate on it over time. That's how you create a successful app. I think that's very important that people understand you don't just make an app. And then another, I guess, misconception amongst clients is it's important that you remember that you're not the only user. So some clients will like Kevin mentioned, they'll just start adding, they'll create a list of features they want. And sometimes we'll have to kind of pull them back and say, hey, this is great. Like these are great features, but we need to make sure that your users want them as well. Because if we make an app for just you, it's only going to benefit one person.
Right.
So.
And that's where, and there's certain things we do with our clients that are a little further along, like we'll integrate event tracking. So we use different products to basically build into the front end of the application. It's a little more technical, but event tracking on a user level, high level is, Sean goes into an app, he clicks this button. We can track that on the back end. We can say, Sean clicked this button, then after that, he clicked another button. And you can basically build funnels and understand what the churn rate is in the funnel and also the conversion rate of the funnel. If you find out that 30% of the people that start the onboarding process finish it, that's not a good conversion rate for onboarding a user to your product. So having that insight allows you to make a data-driven decision. So some of our startups that are a little bit further along, we implement that solution we highly recommend that solution so we can start making data-driven decisions and insights. So we might get some user. Oh, so go ahead, Sean. Sorry.
No, I was going to say really quick. One example of what Kevin just mentioned is when I worked for that fintech startup, we had a form. Obviously, like I mentioned earlier, it was for filling out a business loan application. One of the fields was social security number. Well, you could guess what happened. Most users came through the funnel, and when it got to the point where they had to enter their social, they just stopped filling out the application. So what we noticed is we made one small tweak. We made the social security number, we changed it to be an EIN number or your driver's license number. So we gave the user the option, if they didn't want to actually input their social, they could input some other variation. And that literally overnight, increased conversions of people filling out the business loan application by, I think it was 40%, some ridiculous number.
Psychology.
Yeah.
Right. And that is so wild how one thing like that can really affect the way users use an application. We have some questions that are coming through from the attendees. So let me read through these 1 second. So with the sea of apps, and generally being known as one of the most competitive spaces to be in, how do apps differentiate?
Yeah, that Sean's gonna, I'll defer to him on most of it, but what I'll say to kind of kick it off is that's one thing we try to talk to our clients about that are first starting out. Like we tell them, if you have $100,000 to spend, you can't spend all 100 on the app because you're going to need money for maintenance afterwards. And most importantly, marketing. You have to have a marketing strategy. You have to have a rollout plan. I think social media or social influencer marketing has gotten really huge in the last few years. So, we recommend our clients to talk to, different influencers. Like I said, we have a partner of ours in-house that handles a lot of in-app monetization and user acquisition strategy. So we'll direct them to Adam to kind of talk through some of those options. But the key is making sure that you have a strong marketing strategy. And as far as the differentiation, that's something that we actually work very closely with our clients on, because a lot of times they'll have the idea, and if it does exist already, and it likely does, it's not a bad thing. It's actually, most venture capital firms that you're talking to or investors are going to ask you who are your competitors. And it's not because they want to see who has the first mover advantage. They actually want to see, okay, your competitor, now this is a bad space right now, you wouldn't want to get into it, but food delivery. Okay, there's DoorDash, Uber Eats, Postmates, Grubhub, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Then there was Groupon was in the business for a while, Eat Street. So not all of them, but a lot of them are making money. So when, maybe DoorDash or Grubhub was first, but as you get other people coming in, the venture capital firms are going to say, this is a huge market. The market size is very large. So there's room for more competitors in this space. And then as far as differentiating, I think, Sean can probably be better positioned to discuss that, especially because a lot of that's going to rely on design and the feature set.
Yeah. So really quick, just to answer that question from my end, the biggest differentiating factors when it comes to mobile apps is you have two different you have two different approaches. So if you're developing or designing an app that already has a competitor, so there, let's say there's an app in the App Store that does something similar, you have two ways you can differentiate. You can increase the visual design, so you can make sure that your app is designed better and more intuitive from a visual standpoint, and you can create a better functionality from a functional standpoint as well. Like if that's essentially feature set. So if you look at all the apps in the App Store, and you're attempting to create an app that's similar to another one, I would definitely make sure that you either make sure that your design is better, or that the functionality is better. It usually having an advantage on one of those two sides would be enough to differentiate yourself, but having both that should really make the app shine and put you above them. And then the other thing I was going to mention was the other way you can kind of differentiate yourself from other apps is just by creating an app that doesn't exist. So if you can think of an original concept or an idea that there just is no solution for, I mean, that's a huge differentiating factor as well.
In that case, though, you want to make sure there's a gap in the market. And sometimes you won't find out until you're live, but you know, there could be a reason that it doesn't exist, or you might have actually found a gap. So.
Hey, there's an app for everything.
That's what they say, but there's not.
There isn't. I mean, there's a million trillion things in this world. So yeah, it's definitely thinking out of the box at this point. So you were speaking, you were alluding to functionality and then the interface.
Yeah.
What are some apps that come to mind that are your favorite because of the interfaces?
So in terms of app design, this is a personal preference, but I tend to like very clean, very minimal looking apps. So like if you think like Airbnb or DoorDash, I don't know if you've ever used either of those. Uber has a really slick interface. Any app that it kind of just makes sure that the colors are used strategically. A lot of apps will kind of put images or colors in there just to kind of make it look better, but that's not really making the app more intuitive. So when I use apps, I really like interfaces that make it easy. And when the first apps that come to mind in terms of like ease of use would be like DoorDash, Uber, Airbnb. I'm trying to think of what other ones.
Lemonade.
Lemonade. I don't know if you've ever heard of Lemonade. They're a
insurance.
Yep, they're renting insurance. They have probably one of the most intuitive apps I think I've ever used. When you actually download the app, there's like an AI, so it's like an artificial intelligence engine, but they put a face to it. So you see like this photo of a woman named Molly, and Molly walks you through, getting your insurance set. It's almost like you're sitting down in front of an insurance agent, but you're not. And the efficiencies that are gained on both sides are just immense.
And actually, really quick, I know we have some other questions to answer, but that's one thing that is important to hit on. We are very design UI UX oriented. When companies have a higher level of design maturity or a higher level of maturity in terms of design being incorporated into their workflows and into their business strategy, they have a ton of advantages and they unlock a ton of advantages. Like for example, if you have a good UI UX, you're less prone to customer service inquiries. You're less prone to higher churn rates among clients or customers, I should say. So there are a lot of advantages. And then of course you're differentiating yourself a lot of times, because a lot of app developers, whether they're in-house or whether they're contractors or agencies, a lot of them some are not great at UI or UX. Some are great at UI, but not UX, or vice versa. And then others focus on both and put an equal amount of emphasis on both. And I would say with Sean at the helm of our design team, we're definitely focusing and putting an equal amount of emphasis on both. You want the app to look good. You want the style guide to be good, the colors to mesh well, complementary colors, etc. But then you also want to have a seamless and frictionless user experience that allows the user to get from A to B in the application with as few steps as possible. So we can go into the next question. Sorry.
No, but that's a really great point that you brought up. Like if you put the extra work in to make sure the design all has meaningful functionality and features, and even like the design itself, it'll save them a lot of headache with future potential challenges with users. Like anything to save from the customer support, I think is worth it.
It took corporations many years to understand the value of good design. A lot of apps, if you think back in the day, companies just really didn't understand that good design really could increase efficiencies on a business side of things. A lot of people thought design was like art, like it's just making things look better. But really, design, that is an aspect of good design, is you want it to look good, but it's the balance of looking good and working intuitively. It's that combination that is what really provides the value. It's not good enough to just make an app look good. You have to take it to the next level and make sure it works good and it's intuitive.
Yeah, you want the end users to actually use it and actually get value from it.
For
at
sure.
this point. What are some best practices for brands or people to make money off of their mobile apps in the short term? And then on the flip side, in the long term?
So I mean, I think when it comes to monetization, it depends on the category or the type of the application. Because if you're doing a B2C app, especially around social media, you're not going to want to try and monetize it right away. You're going to want to try people. I mean, I hate to bring it up, but you look, if you ever watched the movie, what was it, The Social Network, with Jesse Eisenberg and Justin Timberlake and all them, like they talk about it in the show. It's actually true, or in the movie. You don't want to start hitting people with fees right away. You want to gain a critical mass. You want to get to a point where the users become dependent, or find the perceived value of your product is such that if you were to start charging them, they would have no problem paying for it, and would, the perceived value is there for them. And we find ourselves with products like that all the time. Slack's a perfect example. We started on a free plan with Slack. In fact, when we started using Slack, I don't even think they had a paid plan. I don't think there was any paid plans when we started using. We started using them years ago, and we literally subscribed within this past year to a paid plan, because the value was there. So I think that that's important to think about when monetizing. Ways to monetize, it really, again, depends on the concept. There's no set rule or set way to do it. I think the freemium model works very well. Sean and I talk about this all the time with our clients. You want to offer them enough to get value out of the application, but maybe once you have enough features on board, you can look into saying, okay, well, maybe like Sean's point, we have a journaling application, a client that we love working with. So we're very much immersed in his team and his organization, very much a partner of his. And we talk about this all the time. What features should we include? We have free features. For example, you can journal, but you can only add up to, I think, like 5 media, 5 videos or images or audio files to a particular entry, unless you upgrade your plan. We talked at some point about curbing the amount of entries a user could make journal entries, but like I was saying to our client, we don't want to do that. That's a bad idea, because you don't want to impose any restrictions that'll prevent the user from actually using the application. You just want to, if you're going to have a freemium model, you want to make sure that you have features that they can use a little bit of, but if they want to use more of it, they're going to have to pay extra. Sean, I'll let you kind of.
Yeah, I was going to say, from a personal perspective, the one that I fall victim to the most in terms of fee structure, so these are the apps that are probably making the most money off of me, are ones that have service fees. So again, going back to DoorDash and Uber, they don't charge a subscription, but when you use their services, you have this, it's a convenience, right? They're providing you with something you need at the moment, and you're willing to pay for that at the moment. I find those types of apps with those types of business models, or those revenue streams, tend to capture the most amount of money. I mean, I try to avoid subscriptions as much as I can, only because I have so many of them. But when it comes to DoorDash,
you forget about them.
Yeah, I mean, I do. Yeah, that's true. But like when it comes to DoorDash, I know I'm paying like $3 or $4 more for my food than if I were to just go pick it up or call the restaurant directly. But the convenience the app affords me is just so much. I don't mind paying that fee. And if I were to add up my DoorDash fees, I'm sure it's probably I am paying on a monthly basis. I am paying a subscription, right, in a sense.
Yeah.
But
yeah. And to your point earlier, Kevin, with the starting off as offering an app for as free to users, especially B2C, I think that is a great way of doing it, because then the flip side, you're able to kind of use it for market research, and they're like the test subjects, like what do they actually care about and what resonates. And then Sean, to your point, I think I have to disagree on the service base, because then you get companies like Ticketmaster and
Oh yeah,
like
yeah.
users are like, what the heck am I paying for?
Well,
Like,
Ticketmaster's like grossly. I
yeah,
think their convenience fee is like 10 or 20% of like the ticket. That's just insane.
yeah, that's just
Yeah,
like greedy at that
yeah,
point. But at the same time, if they have such a
People are
huge
paying
market
for
share,
it. Yeah.
they
yeah,
can, yeah.
yeah.
Um, so we have a couple of minutes left, so I'll ask one more question. So do you ever turn clients away? Like, how do you deem if an idea is viable?
So I mean, Sean and I, obviously being a businessman, you obviously want to generate revenue and obviously take on more clients. But there have been times where we turn down projects. Sometimes it's a budgetary constraint. Most times we actually do everything within our power to work with their budget. Whether it's getting kind of strategic on the feature set. Maybe they want both a web app and a mobile app. We say let's do one instead of the other, just to start out. So it really depends. But we always work with our clients to try and work with their budget and make the deal work with them, assuming that we obviously like the idea. Secondly, we do like to obviously have some type of buy-in on the concept, because we want our clients to do well, especially if they're pre-product, pre-revenue. We want them to do well. We want them to grow. We want to grow with them. So I think that that's important when you're thinking of your client mix. And then also me being, having the former finance background, it's nice to have some diversification as well. So it's nice to have different industries, different sectors. So unlike a COVID year, if there's a slowdown in one sector, one industry, it's nice to have the stability from other industries as well. So, Sean.
Yeah, no, I think you said it well. I mean, if there's ever been an argument between Kevin and me, this is the subject matter. But it's just because I'm very passionate about what I do. Kevin's very passionate about what he does, and sometimes like we'll have a client come to us with, like you said, with an app that either the idea maybe is not original, and I just don't see a path personally how they're going to be successful. And at the same time, I don't want to have to, I don't want to really be designing an experience for someone while the whole time I'm designing it, I'm not really bought into the idea. So there have been clients where have fallen under that category that we have turned down. But most of the time we can talk to the client and we'll just be transparent with them. We'll say, hey, your budget doesn't allow you to create the quality app that we think you have envisioned. So here's what we can do. Maybe we strip out some features. Maybe you have one killer feature. Maybe we focus just on that. And that way we get the cost down for the client, and it's a lesser lift on our end, and everyone kind of wins.
Quality either.
Yeah, it'll still be good quality. It's just we try to instead of having them spend $100,000 on. We had one client a while back that said they wanted to create an app that I think it was they wanted to create an app that delivers food to people's doors from restaurants, and I was like, that exists. So like unless you have a ton of money, yeah. That might not be something you want to kind of tackle. But yeah, other than that, I mean, that's pretty much the major criteria. We don't want to turn too many people down because, our own opinion is not always the right opinion. If they might have a different approach that we're not seeing, and we might not actually find that out until halfway through. So
exactly.
Yeah. And I'm sure they value the transparency and your feedback, because you are the experts. And I think like by guiding them, maybe it could pivot into a different idea that may work better.
yeah.
But I think that was a great way to end this growth series. Definitely appreciate having both Kevin and Sean. Like, you definitely opened my eyes to the mobile app world, and you're very insightful on how that process is and how companies can grow or evolve with technology. It was great hearing your story. And again, I'm Sydney. I'm with VisualFizz, a digital marketing agency. Thank you guys. And thank you everyone for joining. After today, we will save this recording on our website. And also, we will have one last one next week on communities and social media. And after this event, we will have a survey. So if you have any topics or guest recommendations, would love to hear it. Thank you guys again. It was great to hear about Calibrate and what you're doing, and definitely appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you very much for
Thanks,
having
guys.
us. Have a
All
good one.
right. See
All
ya.
right, bye.